sovereign King. Lift up your voice and with us sing. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm going to do a video about the case for creation as the only possible solution to unanswered questions about natural history. I was recently in a debate with an evolutionist who makes the claim that evolution is the only possible solution. However, I will show in this video that the evidence that we have better supports creation as the answer over evolution. So the creation model is diametrically opposed to the evolution model. The creation model claims this creation model is supernaturalistic, it is externally directed, it is purposive, and is completed. The evolution model, however, is all naturalistic or materialistic. It is derived from nature. It is random, not purposive, and it is ongoing. It is continuing now and has continued for billions of years. The creation model is irreversibly directional. Creation, so after creation, things started taking a downward turn toward lower levels of complexity rather than going upward toward higher levels of complexity. Original creation had all the required or desirable elements, qualities, and characteristics, but has since been increasing in entropy and accumulating mutations in all living organisms. Conservation in the creation model replaced the process of creation. So special creative and integrative processes are no longer in operation as they were during creation week, those 6 days during which God created the universe and everything in it. Processes designed to sustain and maintain the basic systems are now in operation in the creation model. So creation is limited to the first 6 days in which God caused time, space, matter, and energy to come into being. And that can be found in Genesis 1 through 31. So the predictions of the creation model. Life can only come from life. Each kind of organism is distinct from all other kinds. No new kinds are appearing. Mutations are harmful. Natural selection is a conservative process, not a creative process. A caveat to that, so there are some creationists who do not think that natural selection is a thing. I happen to be one of them. I don't think that nature can select anything. Darwin got his idea from artificial selection, where breeders will take two animals that have the features that they want, and they'll breed a male and a female to come together to produce the features that they want in the offspring. For example, if they want sheep that have more wool, then they will breed two sheep from the stock that they already have, who already have a propensity for more wool, and they'll breed that, and it'll produce the offspring that has more wool. So in the creation model, there are no ape to human intermediates. They have never existed, and they will never be discovered. And finally, humans are qualitatively distinct from animals. The origin of life. So no evolutionary transition from non-life to life. There's nothing that evolution can produce that shows that life evolved from non-life. They have made those claims in the past, but no one has been able to reproduce it. No one knows how it happened. So now a lot of evolutionary scientists are saying that origin of life is not even considered part of evolution. No evolutionary process of non-replicating chemicals to self-replicating systems. So chemicals cannot just come together and form life. As a matter of fact, some chemicals are detrimental to life, and chemicals are bound by the second law of thermodynamics. So when a chemical reaction happens, then those chemicals come together and react, and then after the reaction, after all of the energy is gone out of the reaction, it stops. So there's no way to keep the reaction going unless some outside force is adding a catalyst to keep that reaction going. So there's no way that chemicals can cause life from just random processes. Life was a unique work of the creation period and is not being created today. It is only being reproduced or copied. You know, we see that every day. Animals, humans are having babies. Plants are producing seeds, and life is being replicated. But there is no new life from non-life being created. So life operates by the principle of conservation and disintegration, not innovation and integration. This, as I said, this principle is predicted based on the first and second laws of thermodynamics. So here is the creation model next to the evolution model. We can see the differences. So kind, in the creation model, kind is the basic created unit. For example, mankind or human is the created unit for humans. So in humankind, all tribal groups among men have developed from the originally created man and woman, that is Adam and Eve. All tribal groups are basically one biological unit, interfertile with each other. So if you take an African from the Sahara and let's say a Swedish person, they will come together and they are fertile together and they will have an offspring that is still human. So there is no such thing as race. Race was something that Darwin introduced into the language, and there is, well, he didn't introduce it into the language, he made it popular. So we're all a human race. There's no such thing as race in biblical terms in the creation model. Each distinct ethnic group has its own peculiar history of segregation, mutation, and adaptation, but they're still human. Differences such as skin color, hair texture, bone structure, etc., are attributed to the recessive genes already implicitly present in the genetic program, but hidden until expressed in the offspring. In the creation model, mankind was created fully formed and functional with complex thought and speech. And fossils are either apes or human. There are no intermediate forms. In the evolution model, humans are classified in the animal kingdom. Humans slowly evolved. A common ancestor of man and ape existed between 5 and 20 million years ago. Humans arrived between 1 and 3 million years ago through various evolutionary stages. The evolution model is incapable of explaining the origin of human language. Fossil hominoids and hominids show various evolutionary stages of pre-humans. So what this basically is, scientists are interpreting fossils based on their own personal beliefs and prejudices. So they'll see a fossil and they'll say, hey, this kind of looks like something else we see today, but there's no way that they can establish an ancestor-descendant relationship from just looking at this dead animal. You can't tell from a dead animal who its parents were or what its offspring look like. They're just guessing. Paleoanthropology is the most subjective and contentious field of biology. Individual specimens can be reconstructed in a variety of ways and is based on the scientist's own imagination. So these artists are just drawing what they think the whole animal would look like. You find bones, and then you picture in your head what this animal may have looked like, and then you draw a picture of it. And that is what's put into textbooks nowadays, and have been for, since evolution has been the only thing taught in school. The fossil record cannot establish ancestor-descendant relationships, as I've already said. The complexity of life. A complete human genome consists of 2 sets of 3 billion individual molecules or nucleotides. The genome is full of multiple, overlapping linear and instructional forms of genetic information. All genes in the genome have genes that regulate genes or that sense changes in the environment and then instruct other genes to react. So genes react to the environment by setting in motion complex cascades of events that can then respond to the environment. Each human body contains more than 100 trillion cells. And back to the other point, some genes in the genome actively rearrange themselves, or they modify and methylate other gene sequences. Each human body contains more than 100 trillion cells. Each cell has a complete set of genetic instructions directing cellular functions. Each cell not only performs its own functions, but it is in constant communication with other cells. So there are only about 23,000 genes in the human genome, and each part of a gene can be used in multiple different proteins by creating different combinations of protein coding genes. So there's no way that this could have happened by some random process. A random process statistically could never have come up with all these combinations of genes and proteins and cells. And even, living tissue, a living cell could not have formed from anything inorganic. So the complexity of life is such that there's no way evolution could have produced it. So complexity is a problem for evolution. So interdependent parts do not function unless other parts are also present. None of the biological systems work until all necessary components are present and working. This was coined by Michael Behe as called irreducible complexity. What that is everything in life has to be fully functional and have all of its components before it can be functional and working. Non-functional essential components are detrimental to survival. So for example, a muscle is useless without the connected nerves directing contraction, and both muscles and nerves are useless without the complicated control mechanism of the brain. And during my debate with the evolutionist, I used a very simple analogy. The human cannot function, cannot even live without that person's heart. So if you take the heart out, then that heart will not function without the human body, and the human body will not function without the heart. So basically humans, there is an irreducible complexity to human beings. We can amputate a limb or we can live without an eye, but those vital parts, those vital organs, we cannot live without. So we are irreducibly complex in that sense. So DNA is highly fragile. For DNA to be useful, it needs a huge complement of repair enzymes to maintain it. These enzymes are also coded in the DNA. DNA cannot be sustained in the cell without them. And without DNA, life cannot exist. DNA cannot exist outside of a living cell. So The nature of DNA is such that evolutionary processes could not have caused this circular, interdependent existence of life. So it's like the chicken and the egg problem. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, the egg could not have been formed without the chicken. The chicken, could not have come from anything other than the egg, as in the evolutionary process. These circular, since life is circular, one can't be without the other. Then the evolution model could not have brought that about. Evolution does not work in those kinds of circular interdependent processes where everything had to be fully functional in order for it to work. Genetic mutations. So evolution model prediction is that mutations are beneficial and generate a vertical change upward toward higher degrees of order. The creation model prediction is that if there are real mutations causing vertical changes in complexity and order of the kinds, they will be harmful, not beneficial. So with the creation model, the vertical changes go downward in complexity. And in the evolutionary model, the vertical changes go upward in complexity or higher degrees of order. But experimental facts support the creation model. So these experimental facts are that mutations are random, they're not directional. Germline mutations are rare, not common. Beneficial mutations are extremely rare. And the net effect of all mutations is harmful. Mutations affect and are affected by many genes. So biochemical mutations do not affect an organism's phylogeny, no matter the benefits. So you can have mutations that are on a microscopic level. They're not going to cause such phylogenetic changes that improve the organism in any kind of way. The life just doesn't work that way. How evolution fails. So all components of an organism that are necessary for survival must be functioning simultaneously. Genetic mutations cause damage to the genome, thus leading to reduced survivability in living organisms. Most all mutations are either slightly deleterious or lethal. The mutation rate in living organisms is rapid, and the mutations are accumulative. Mutations rise faster than selection can eliminate them. Mutations are overwhelmingly too subtle to be selectable, and bad mutations are often physically linked to good mutations, causing them to not be separated in inheritance, resulting in all higher genomes being degenerate. So in other words, you have bad mutations that get passed down to the offspring along with the good mutations. So there's no way that these bad mutations can be separated out and create something other than the offspring of the parents. A process that steadily degrades the genome cannot produce a better organism. So mutations is a process that steadily degrades the genome throughout. It's been doing that throughout history. Throughout human history, we have more diseases now. We have more defects now. So mutations, we see where mutations have caused these detrimental effects. And you can even see them in dog breeding. Dog breeding is a classic example of where artificial selection has caused so many mutations in some of these dogs that they have many health problems. Like Great Danes have problems with their bones. They have joint problems. They have organ problems. Some of the smaller dogs have problems breathing because their noses are so short. They've been bred to the point where their noses are too short for them to breathe adequately to provide that adequate lung expansion. The improbability of life occurring in the simplest cells with the corresponding molecular complexity vastly exceeds one chance in 10 to the 150th power. In other words, it's basically saying it's impossible. New kinds of organisms have never been observed to have evolved by random mutations. And so a lot of evolutionists will cite antibiotic resistance as an example, but that's not a real example of evolution. Most cases of antibiotic resistance are because of antibiotics poisoning molecules in bacteria. Resistance because of mutations alter the bacteria's molecules just enough to avoid poisoning. And they also use the fruit fly example, where you have these fruit flies that have developed 4 wings, and they call that, evolution. Well, the 4-winged fruit fly is an example of artificial selection, showing that mutations can shut down a complex network of interactions. These fruit flies are unable to fly and usually cannot mate. They can only survive in a laboratory. There is no way for the environment to control mutations to make them produce necessary characteristics. And 99% of all mutations are near neutral, deleterious, or lethal. So evolution pretty much fails on any kind of explanation for life continuing and improving. So back to creation. The work of the 6 days of creation. So on day 1, there was energizing of the physical elements of the cosmos. And this is in scientific terms. This is not in the biblical terms. You can read about the 6 days of creation in Genesis 1 through 31. That's the entire chapter 1 of Genesis. But this is a scientific description from an author that I'll mention at the end, all of my resources. So day 2, formation of the atmosphere and the hydrosphere. Day 3 was formation of the lithosphere and biosphere. Day 4 was formation of the astrosphere. 5, the formation of life in the atmosphere and hydrosphere. 6, formation of life for the lithosphere and biosphere. And 7 was rest from the completed work of creating and making. So yes, this is described in Genesis 1 through 31. So creation according to scripture. The basic facts of science fit the special creation model much better than they do the evolution model. Details of the creation period, duration, order, methods, purposes, etc., cannot be determined from science. Evolution can also not be determined from science. The rescue device for evolution is a long process too slow for observation, which renders the experimental method an impossibility when applied to evolution. So what evolutionary scientists are doing, they are performing research on things that are going on now, and then they're saying, okay, we see these genes, or we see this animal looks this way, or these animals have the same basic genetic structure in some of their genes. So they must have come from an animal they must have evolved from an animal that was fossilized, or from, they must have a common ancestor with this other animal. But there's no way to establish any kind of ancestor-descendant relationship from that. They are only seeing what these animals have in common, and then jumping to the conclusion that these animals came from the same ancestor. Well, life does not work that way. It's like saying that because a horse can jump over a 6-foot fence, then a horse can also jump over a 60-foot wall. It makes no sense. There's no way that you can get these minor similarities to then say that, okay, because there are minor similarities, then this is a evolutionary process from a common ancestor. There's no evidence to support that. The scientific method is limited to the study of processes as they occur in the present. Scientific processes cannot create organic or inorganic material as demonstrated by the laws of thermodynamics. So they can't even create anything showing that evolution might be true, because they can't even create something from nothing. They can't create life from non-life. Creation is presented as fact revealed by the Creator to his holy prophets. So purposive process during creation and mature creation at the onset. So in Acts 3:21 and 2 Timothy 3:16, we see that God gave men his word by inspiration of the Holy Spirit. So God created everything in the beginning, and then he, by his Holy Spirit, moved men to write his word. They transcribed his word as he gave it to them. And that's how we know that creation happened from a biblical point of view. The created world was different from the present world. And you can see in 2 Peter 3:6, light from the first 3 days did not come from the sun, moon, or stars. So a lot of people say that, okay, see, the sun wasn't even created on the first 3 days, so how can that be? Well, God created light on the first day. They say that God created light on the first day, but I believe that God is light, and so he manifested light to come into the physical realm. So that light that was here on day one of creation is what provided the day and night. Darkness was on one side of the world, light was on the other side of the world. The earth rotated still. It was a 24-hour day by the earth's rotation on its axis. And then sin came into the world, causing decay. After Adam and Eve had sinned, then the world started dying. Everything started dying. The atmosphere was like a water vapor type atmosphere that disappeared after the flood. There was a progressive loss of fitness, particularly after the flood. The human race is presently degenerating at 1% to 2% per generation because of the accumulation of mutations. A 1% decline in fitness per generation, beginning with a fitness of 1, is plotted for a hypothetical human population over a period of 300 generations, which is about 6,000 to 9,000 years. So if you see this graph on the right, it shows where the humans had a long lifespan, 900 years, 800 years. Noah, who survived the flood with his 3 sons, Noah lived to be 600 years old. And then a few generations after that, people started living to, 175 years old, and down to 100 years old, down to 70 something years old. So there's a exponential decay curve that the Bible describes, and we can plot it using the data. So it's the scientific evidence that that this really happened. So in summary, the creation model is supported by the first and second laws of thermodynamics. The first law is conservation. The second law is disintegration. The creation model explains the origin of life, while the evolution model cannot. The creation model holds that each kind of animal reproduces the same kind of offspring in every generation as observed in all of nature. The complexity of life is supported by the creation model, but it is a problem for the evolution model. The creation model makes predictions that are supported by experimentation. The Creator revealed his creation work to holy prophets by his word. In conclusion, God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. Creation is the only possible solution to unanswered questions about natural history. And these are all of my references. You can get these from Amazon, or you can go to their websites. These are very good books that I would recommend to anyone who, even if you believe in evolution, if you want to grasp the other side, if you want to see what creation scientists are looking at, what kind of evidence they are providing, then I would urge you to get these books, and I will put them in the description. If I can figure that out, I will put them in the description and for you to be able to reference. So I hope you enjoy this video. Please like if you like the video. Feel free to leave comments. This is my first YouTube video. Well, actually, it's my second YouTube video, but I'm not really good at this. I'm really going to try to make this a thing, and I hope I win your support at some point. Thank you.
Of our God and King, lift up your voice and with us sing, hallelujah.